Previously on Yu-Gi OCG, we took a look at Volume 7. Despite some notable additions to the card pool like Barrel Dragon, Mirror Force, and Robin Goblin, Exodia stayed a powerhouse thanks to Thunder Dragon thinning the deck further. On top of Cannon Soldier OTK finding new ways to end games via Catapult Turtle. It was a rough start to the new millennium for Yu-Gi-Oh, to say the least. Well, with one more main set left in Series 1, will the OCG maintain its toxic status, or will this climactic booster set end the game on a positive note? Firstly, we have quite the big change. On February 3rd, Konami would announce a restriction revision that would be used at the upcoming second national tournament, aka second national convention, held on March 19th. This is in a similar function as the Tokyo Dome list was, where it would only be mandated at tournament-related events, of which would begin across Japan this month to filter out the top 8 come said event. That's all fine and dandy, but what exactly got hit this time around? The list would be a continuation from the previous one and not specific per event, hence the revision specificity. Specificity. I cannot say that word to save my life. So Raigeki and Darkhold would still be limited, whereas Trapple was now off the list entirely. Hold not having any limitations now show Konami's awareness for power creep as the game continues to evolve. Also new in regards to limitation options are semi-limited cards that a duelist can only have 2 copies of in their deck. This lineup includes Graceful Charity, Harpy's Feather Duster, and Monster Reborn. Historically, this section is for cards that Konami keeps an eye on to see if it's a major problem, or one that can be laxed down the line, which makes sense given Charity lost power with the Searcher's ruling, and Duster and Reborn both have specific uses. Now for newly limited cards, this includes Change of Heart, Pot of Greed, Last Will, Mirror Force, and all 5 Exodia pieces. Most of it, if not all, makes sense. Exodia was a problematic deck to say the least, and Will was a major catalyst for OTKs. Heart and Mirror were hits for good stuff, a deck that can now breathe. And Pot was necessary alongside Charity as to not let duelists dig through their deck as much, thus slowing the game down in both speed and power. It is interesting that Konami didn't hit every power card like the Searchers and Magician of Faith, however. With the February list, Exodia was gutted, roughly removing a quarter of the overall deck. OTKs could still happen like with Exodia or Cannon Soldier burning through monsters, however a player couldn't rely on it without sacrificing win rate. Duelists would still run Exodia as a theoretical FTK, but good stuff conceptually had returned, which clearly helped the metagame by promoting deck diversity. This showed that Konami was keeping tabs on its competitive scene in between major events. An entire month later, on March 1st, Series 1 would receive its final booster set. The set was promoting strategy variety with the likes of support cards such as Pump King, the King of Ghosts, and Castle of Dark Illusions. Aside from the manga-related cards, the real draw was the new Magic card, Heavy Storm. This is to Feather Duster as Darkhold is to Raigeki. While it's not as good in comparison, Duster was just semi-limited, making Storm a great secondary option for back row removal, especially as traps can see more play now thanks to the slowdown game state. In addition, Storm was a common in a booster set, unlike Duster, which was locked as a video game promo. In the monster category, Jirai Gumo was a sight to see thanks to its hefty 2200 attack stat, the peak of low-level beaters, and one that eclipses even Dark Elf. That said, it has a higher downside in that it could potentially cut your life in half. The downside was seen as worse more times than not compared to Gemini Elf, which has 0 downsides, and is why more people play Gemini over Dark Elf. Also remembering that life points play an important factor in the game once again. Duelist sentiment on thinking low-level monsters would get stronger and stronger appeared to be true. The last important card was Dream Clown. This card has unique positional utility to where it gains an effect should it switch battle position. It's like the next evolution of flip monsters since it's not locked to a single use. The benefit being that it can pop a monster, making it great for free face-down removal. And also the reason why it's played more than Crass Clown. And this can be backed up by defensive cards like Swords and Waboku. In an age where good stuff returned, duelists could look at utility monsters like Clown, Penguin Soldier, and Mass Sorcerer as a way to spice up their builds. And that's not all. Booster 7 also introduces Skull Knight, a powerful fusion with low-level materials. Beforehand, any fusion worth its slot for beatdown required monsters that could be bricks like Summon Skull and Thunder Dragon. Skull Knight even beats out Labyrinth Tank and Skull for that matter. Despite its non-bricky materials, both cards are considered underpowered. Other than Tainted Wisdom does beat over Witch, and Ancient Brain ties with Sangan, it's hard to recommend these as a meta-viable strategy, but they do have some merit, so take that for what you will. The final two cards I want to quickly discuss are Stimpack and Share the Pain. Stimpack is a 700 equip that has the monster lose 200 attack during your standby phases. This is the next evolution of equips, since many of these 700 buff ones previously were attribute specific like Light Castle and Salamandra. With a card like this, you could use it as a proactive attack buff, though I would be skeptical if it gave life back to the once meta deck. Beatdown could possibly make use of it, whereas Share the Pain is another proactive way to trigger searchers and deal with opposing monsters. It's good for magic-oriented face-down singleton removal, like Tribute to the Doomed, while comboing in a way Doomed used to. Generally, Booster 7 is seen as a weirdly lackluster set to cap off Series 1. The status quo remained the same, where Beatdown and Control battled. Even Exodia as a defensive deck played more like how I imagine Konami intended it to, much like its first incarnation with Skelengel. The game got simplified, but in a good way. More so, the game turned back to its original form and not the combo monstrosity it converted to. Sounds familiar. And now there's significantly more cards in the pool than there was back in the Volume 5 days. Before we get to the big event, let's jump the gun and discuss the final release of Series 1, Dark Ceremony, released on March 23rd. I'm talking about this now due to pacing and power reasons. This is a big reprint set of all the rituals up to this point, and then some. Javelin Beetle, Chakra, Fortress Whale, and Skull Guardian. While being a rarity downgrade, as well as Konami not including any ritual support like they've done with fusions, more options is always nice for player aesthetics. Casually, it's not far out of the question to play a strong BLS deck or a level 7 or 6 fusion-based strategy due to level synergy, or even some janky Javelin Beetle insect beatdown deck. Just goes to show the level of variety a post-Exodia format exudes. Going back on track, one day before the second national tournament, March 18th would see the release of Shonen Jump 16. The important takeaway from this is the page that included a note about Last Will receiving an errata. Now, the card's effect could only be used once per card. Konami clearly knew the issue at hand, especially right before the finals of a major tournament. This killed the Cockroach Loop and typical Cannon Soldier OTKs thereof. Then the fateful day arrives, the culmination of Series 1 Yu-Gi-Oh! The large tournament took place at the Tokyo Big Sight building on March 19th, during the Tokyo Toy Show, the largest toy industry show in Japan at the time. This was a huge opportunity for Konami to show off Yu-Gi-Oh! To a wide audience. Could be the reason behind them neutering Exodia, but that's just a theory. Additionally, this was the first big event with known teams entering, solidifying Yu-Gi-Oh! As a game worth strategizing over. Despite knowing the types of decks the top duelists use like Beatdown, Cannon Burn, and a defensive deck, we only have the winning deck list by Masahiro Okamoto playing a control deck. Nature is healing. What's a bit unnatural were the prize cards. Top 3 would receive specialty made cards that took previously existing cards and morphed their faces onto them. Third place, Tomohiro the Mountain Warrior. Second place, Yasushi the Skull Knight. And of course, first place, Masahiro the Dark Clown. Yasushi is the only card in the game's history to require a back row fusion material. Imagine if Konami would explore this design more. These cards are just bizarre, and real despite Kevin Tewart stating otherwise, despite the cards themselves being illegal for play. Also noticeable is that they use the following Series 2 card layout. Since the art uses the winner's faces, it's tough to know at what point these cards were printed, if it was before or after the Premier Series 2 set. Chicken or the egg type of thing. All in all, this was a great way to end Series 1 Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout Series 1, Konami clearly had a tough time balancing the game whilst introducing new cards and mechanics. Cream rose to the top and the rest sunk as convoluted wording spread toxic decks like Ultimate Offering and Exodia. The Expert Rules was a much needed addition, giving players agency to express themselves. But this came with the inherent issue of splintering Konami's lead and the metagame. Thankfully, they were able to pivot from, thanks in part to the game's increasing popularity, which made the restriction revision a necessary step, to the point where it would become the widespread public list come April 1st. In retrospect, despite Series 1's tempestuous history, it had plenty of positives, from the equip days of the official rules, to the inclusion of Blue Eyes White Dragon, to the Tokyo Dome's Rogue Doll meta, to its climax at the Tokyo Big Site. There's plenty to appreciate from the game's first year and change. Hopefully, I was able to cover as much of its importance throughout the series without getting too microscopic nor too macro. Hey, maybe I'll even do a Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG Series 2 if you all want. So let me know on my Patreon, wink wink. Series 2 would officially begin on April 18th with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime hitting the airwaves, with the first set coming out 2 days later. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. That'll be a story for another day.